We are live.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. This is Ananda and Michael, and I want to bring Michael on today. How are you, Michael?
Doing really well. It's a beautiful day today, and the energy is just uplifting. So it's really nice. Yeah. How are
Yeah,
you?
I'm doing great. And today, what is the day? Today is Thursday, right? Yes,
It
Thursday.
is, yes.
So we're almost headed into February, which is the Lunar New Year as well, which is coming up on February 1st. And so there's a lot of energy shifts happening right now, as we can see around us and within us. And so Michael is an amazing person to talk to in terms of the subconscious mind, how we can use the subconscious mind as a tool, um, and how we can really tap into the energies that are moving through as a collective and individually as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And also, Michael, you were just actually involved in one of the current events that is happening right now with the convoy movement that was happening. And you kind of were spontaneous and went on that trip. Did you want to say a little bit about that? Tell us a little bit about how that was.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so you're right. It was completely spontaneous. A good friend of mine, he was going all the way to Ottawa with a group of people, basically to really hold the space. And he's with police, the RCMP. And so he's with a group called the Police on Guard. And just to kind of bring forth the idea that, it's really about our Constitution, it's really about our chartered rights. So he was just there and going there to really support our ability to tune into our chartered rights and know our chartered rights. So when he invited me to go, I was just like, yeah, let's go for it. And
Awesome.
basically, jumped in the vehicle, and it was phenomenal. The amount of people coming together just completely opened me up emotionally. And I was having tears of joy, tears of gratitude, and just with all the energy that people put towards the truckers and everyone that's joining the truckers. Like, people were making sandwiches and giving sandwiches to the truckers and different people. I mean, there is probably thousands of dollars spent just on coming to a space, a location where they're going to stop temporarily. And
Mhm.
yeah, just so much energy and food and nourishment and gratitude was there. So it was exceptional. And so it went all the way to Calgary, and all the way to Calgary, I've never seen so many people. There was thousands and thousands of people on the sides of the road cheering on. So
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so like when I saw that you were actually going on that, I was like, yes, of course he is, of course. Yeah, anything to do with the that movement of more unity is so important at this time as well, right? And like you were saying, people are starting to realize that this collective movement is we need to come together more. We need to be around each other more, not less. Like we need to be safe and not oblivious to what's going on, but we can't keep living our lives in this separate energy. And that's kind of like there's this energy that's percolating right now, and it's coming into fruition. And there's no, it's not a coincidence that we are in the Aquarius season right now, right? Because that's that's what the Aquarius season is about thinking about outside the box and pushing the boundaries. And that's kind of where we're at right now, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. As you were mentioning, going into February, the new moon season, it's such a powerful time, with the shifts and a lot of activity that is taking place from the traditional Chinese medicine, the Chinese astrology. It's the water tiger, which is all
Yeah.
about empowerment, being active, standing up for truth, standing up for your rights. So the water tiger really plays into it. And this is about people getting into action and standing for what they believe in, and really not only that, but bringing themselves into their heart space, because
Yeah.
that's where our truth comes from, is our heart. the love for our life, and standing in that love, and knowing our truth in that love. So it's a really powerful time right now.
Right. Yeah. So how can people dive a little bit deeper into that? Like if they're having a tough time, kind of like they want to stand for something, they want to help out, they want to be around other people, but they're not really sure like where to start. Like we always say, it starts with you, right? So how can they kind of tap into more of that energy in terms of like um, this water tiger energy that's now coming in this year for us?
Yeah, well, the first thing is to always ask questions to ourselves. Have self-inquiry. Tuning in, checking in, not so much the mind, but more the heart. Our emotions, and sometimes it's easiest to find a nice quiet space, and really just ground into yourself, ground into the essence of your being, and just fall in love with yourself again. Take
Mhm.
some time to really appreciate who you are, and how far you've come to this point today. And just ask questions like, what do I really believe is true for me in these times? How can I truly connect more deeply with myself?
Mhm.
And self-inquiry is one of the very first keys to really tuning into our subconscious. Um, our subconscious, in different cultures, believe that the heart was the brain of our subconscious mind. And
Mhm.
so when we connect to that heart space, then we can really know the truth of, what an emotion's trying to tell us. And our
Mhm.
emotions, where there's emotion, there's motion.
Yeah.
So
When we talk about like the chakras and different thing, like the energy body, the energetic body, it's I totally agree that the heart chakra, that energy there is like the symbol of the subconscious mind. There's so much there to dive into. It's this vast, deep ocean of knowledge that we can dive into. But in terms of bringing that out into the world, you know, that's the solar plexus chakra is also so important to move that energy through into your world, right? Like, I think a lot of people are connected to their heart, but they don't really know how to move that energy into their world and create their own reality and be their own magician of sorts, right? And so, uh, you and I were talking about how this year the word is that came to both of us is the word go, or now is the time, now is the
yeah,
right? But we keep saying like I don't know what that means, but okay, like, here we go, and we're already in January, and it's like this huge movement is happening externally, collectively, and then within, just individually. Like I've been getting all of these messages to just produce, create, move energy, go out and be with people. Like it's just constant. It's constant for me. When usually January or winter would be a season where it's like, it's time to go inwards, it's time to reflect. But this year has really already been that tiger energy. I feel like going out, making things happen. And so I've been teaching a lot about the solar plexus chakra this year because that's really about bringing our dreams or our energy or our beliefs into our reality. And so, can you talk a little bit more about that for you, or what that experience is for you when you feel all of this energy collectively and internally, but and we obviously want to go with the flow, but how do we kind of filter that energy and focus that energy so that it's really tapped in and tuned in to our higher selves in that way?
yeah, great question. Just personally for myself, it has been a time over the last couple of years, and I feel like a lot of people went through the same thing, is going inwards, and really finding a time to really check in, and more so isolate. And I kind of had a good feeling that it didn't matter what the outside circumstances were. Anything could have manifested out in the outside circumstances, but just that idea where we are isolated, we are kind of in our own little bubble, it kind of made us go more inwards and really double check of, where we are at, who we are. And with that, that's when we could really pivot ourselves and pivot ourselves towards what we truly desire, what we truly would love to act towards. It was almost like a reset button, like the last 2 years was like the reset button. And
Mhm.
now, being able to go inwards and have this time where the energy is increasing. People are so I guess anxious on the edge of their seat, and they just want to get out and do stuff. And
Mhm.
this is such a powerful energy just naturally, from being isolated to now having this energy of like, I want to get going, I want to do something. And so how we can use that is to really allow a time to be in that heart space, and you know that you are alive. You are alive, you're able to act, you're able to do, you have hands, you have feet, you could get
Mhm.
going, and be able to think and do. And so recognizing on a deep level that you are alive,
Mhm.
celebrate, you have a body, you're
Yeah.
able to express. When you sleep, your body's laying there, it's not doing anything. And same thing when you die, but right now we're alive. And to really acknowledge that, we might just think about it, but thinking and dropping that into an emotion by contemplating it is really where we can really set into that. And so, there's really no limitations for who we are, but it's ourselves that really put that limitation on. And so knowing that if you're alive, if you really realize that it's only you that is getting in your own way, then how can you really allow yourself to begin to contemplate? If you don't do it, if you don't do what you want to do, where are you going to be in 5 years, even a year? And so kind of outweighing it, if you act now, then yeah, it's going to be spontaneous. There may be fear, there may be a little bit of excitement, but know that whenever you do step in that uncomfortable space, it may be a little bit uncomfortable. It may feel a little bit of fear. We all feel that, and nobody's alone with that. So that's usually one of the main things that stop people is that fear, that little bit of hesitation. But when you know that you're alive and you're able to do anything, and when you do step into the unknown and do act, and it just feels good, like that's the essence to tune into. It's like, okay, how good can you feel with your actions in these
Yeah.
times of uprising energy? And so it's really checking in, coming from that center, checking in, asking yourself, if you do act, how's that going to feel? If you don't, how's that going to feel?
Mhm. And so I know you do a lot of different practices yourself, like a sadhana practice in the morning. You sit down, you meditate, you do a lot of different things yourself. So how do you prepare? Like, how do you prepare your energy for the day?
Yeah, great question. I have a lot of affirmations I go through. And so my
Hmm.
morning is all about contemplation. And so throughout the many months, and this is something that I've accumulated over, probably a good year now, but I'll sit down with all the things that I've contemplated over the years, and I combine it into affirmations. And these affirmations, I'll write out like a mini story. So every time I read out this mini story, it just makes me feel kind of really good. It's like doesn't matter how I wake up, and no matter what I feel in the morning when I wake up, when I read these affirmations and these mini stories I put for myself, it's just like a reset button.
Hmm.
I go into this like emotional state from the morning, and I just been able to really like add to it. And now I'm in the multiple pages. And so I have this kind of like journaling, but more in the state of affirmations and mini sentences. And I'll take like an hour every morning and just really sit in a very peaceful, calm state and just read them all,
Yeah.
contemplate it, and not really like think about it, but I'll read it with my heart. So when I'm reading something, instead of responding with my mind, I'll respond with my heart space. And so I
Yeah.
do that every morning. That's been a morning ritual.
That's so beautiful. And that's what I actually teach in the Reiki principles is this when you wake up every morning, what are you telling yourself? Like actively telling yourself. And so I get my students to create their own Reiki principles, not the traditional Buddhist ones, but the ones that actually resonate for you. And when you write them down, like make sure they're coming also coming from a heart space because then you'll be able to receive them that way as well, right? Instead of we think like intellectually, like, oh, I should say this to myself, but what actually resonates with you, like what is your intuition telling you to say to your inner child? Like, I think that that's the most important thing, is like, how are you showing up as your own best parent? How are you capable of doing that? Are you capable of nourishing your inner child and really holding space for yourself? And that's a big deal, especially if you're wanting to step into the space to hold that space for other people too, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And being able to really find those areas within ourselves that just light up when we do take time to, whether it be an
Mm,
affirmation statement or a meditation we go into, like a mantra,
yeah,
then, it's like when we do hit that note, it just makes us light up, and we have this emotion that we could really emphasize, and we could
yeah.
go into and really expand with and nourish ourselves with. And
So I'd love to go in, actually provide that today if you're willing to. Maybe share some of those affirmations that you kind of dive into yourself as we breathe. But first, maybe we touch a little bit on trance as well, seeing that's in the heading as well. And I know that that's something that you work with a lot. So tell me a little bit more about that and how you work with trance in order to connect with the subconscious mind.
yeah, so my journey and how I've unfolded over the last 10, I guess 12 years now. Oh my God, 2022 is I've had many health issues in the past with anxiety, depression, coping with different terrible habits,
Yeah.
alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and all those things. And so self-medicating, I was in and out of the doctor's office for irregular heart patterns, and the depression and anxiety was just taking a huge toll on my body, and I couldn't really handle myself to a certain points, and I was tired of being experimented with for like different pharmaceuticals. So I actually just left that all behind and said, no, I want to just research myself, because in back of my mind, my subconscious, there's an area where it's just like, you weren't always like this, like when you were a kid, you didn't have all these problems. Like, what happened? And so the journey of my research and really beginning to ask questions and really tune into that ability to know what's happening within myself, I come across lots of conscious philosophies, lots of subconscious arts. I had the privilege of going down to Central South America and working with different shamans and medicine men. I had the opportunity to work with a 105-year-old shaman and some indigenes, and everyone had a different tool to access the trance state of mind, or access the subconscious, in other words. So there's so many different tools that we can work with to access that part of who we are, whether it be a deep in state of meditation, whether that be plant medicines, psychedelics. And so I had many opportunities to try out different tools to get there. And I just had these expanded awakenings of understanding where all my problems came from, and eventually, my anxiety started to diminish. My depression began to go away. I was finding that my habits were easier and easier to put down. And I eventually got into clinical hypnotherapy. And at first, I went for sessions myself, and I ended up actually transforming more in 5 months than I did in 5 years. And so I was like, okay, well, there's something to this. I'm going to learn everything I possibly can about this, because there wasn't that much information about the subconscious. It was quite difficult to really research. And I wanted to kind of stay out of religion a little bit, just to get a different bird's view of what subconscious is, what spirituality is. And so I really researched as much as I can through the hypnotherapy school. And I actually went as far as you can. I got my 3 levels in clinical hypnotherapy. I actually became a registered clinical hypnotherapist with the International Medical and Dental Hypnotherapy Association. And I was able to use that as a tool. So hypnotherapy is a tool to access our subconscious as well. And hypnosis in general, it's just another title for trance. That's all it is. There's this crazy idea where like hypnosis, ooh, it's scary and all these scary things, but
Yeah.
actually it's just another title for trance. And
Yeah, and like what if you take plant medicine? It's the exact same thing.
exactly.
It's just all about surrendering.
Yeah.
We talk about the
Yeah.
subconscious mind and how, if you work with archetypes or essences, we also call the high priestess the gatekeeper to the subconscious mind, and nobody can force her to open. She has to be surrendered to. And
Exactly.
so that all these different tools of getting there allows you to surrender that conscious part of you that's like, no, I need to be in control. It's all about control issues. We all have them. It's all
Yeah.
about just like doing something that distracts you from wanting that control, and then allowing yourself to go deeper. Because the only way we can go deeper is if we're actually willing to let go. And subconsciously, I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard because consciously sometimes you can be like, yeah, I want to let go of my control issues. I want to do that. I think we all want to do that. But when you're faced with the actual reality of letting go, that's when you realize how many control issues you have. It's like, oh, okay. Um,
Yeah, and the irony of it all is when we do move out of the mind and more into the trance state of our subconscious, we actually are in way more connection and control than when we were in our mind. Because
right.
now we're in that trance state that connects us so deeply to our emotions, and so our emotional IQ boosts incredible amounts. All of a sudden, we're so emotionally intelligent because we're
Mm,
connected with our emotions, and the decisions that we were thinking about, it's like, oh, I need to do it this way, this way, this way, this way, and our logic kind of gets in the way. But when
mhm,
we're tuned into our emotions, it's like, oh, no, like this feels right. And
mm,
there's so many better approaches to go this way that my emotions are telling me. So it's quite interesting. It's that whole ego part of the mind where it's just like, oh, I need control and it has to be logical. And that's what I've often found with, working with so many people now. It's just like when they do actually, our first understanding that, trance is one of the natural states of our mind. We have the waking state, the sleeping state, and trance state. But
mm,
when we're, brought up from an early age, we're told, hey, stop daydreaming, you need to focus in school. And daydreaming is a natural state of trance.
mm.
Daydreaming, imagination, being in connection with our emotions, and just being in that la la land, but
Yeah,
it's that land in that space where we're just so well connected to our emotions, and we could ride those emotional waves and
yeah,
just really paint a beautiful reality. That's where we can create so magnificently.
yeah. So what got you into hypnosis? Because, I know you've done quite a bit of plant medicine journeys. And in terms of that, like with my own experience anyways, that can sometimes come off as like forcing the subconscious mind to come forward, right? Because like, when you go on an ayahuasca trip, there really isn't like your free will really isn't a thing because grandmother medicine comes in and it's like you're just with the medicine. There's no getting out of that for hours, right? um and I know for me, I've had these trips with plant medicine where I've actually understood how in control I need to be because yeah, I what you're saying is like, when you go into that trance state and you're like feeling great and everything, but then one thing happens, like one thought pops into your head and it's like, uh-oh, I feel paranoid now. And then it all starts to crumble. You know what I mean? It's just like this like crumbling sensation of like, uh-oh, now I feel paranoid. Now I want this trip to end. I want, all of these control factors start to come in. So would you say like hypnosis is more of um, a route that can like ease you into that space a little bit more with time? Is that why you
Um,
got into it?
Yeah, it was plant medicines were quite an unstable approach to accessing the subconscious
Yeah,
because it's that same idea where it's just like the plant medicine comes in and you're just like doesn't matter how long you want to be in there, it's like you're going to be there for a certain
yeah,
amount of time, and because everything becomes so active and the plant medicine is working through the vibration of your body and just really activating things, it's quite unstable. So you could go into a feeling and it's just like kaploosh, and you're in there and you're exploring and it's just like, oh my god, this is such an intense time. And then you could ride these like roller coaster waves, and in that sense, it's great to explore, but it's quite unstable to really do the inner work.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have incredible breakthroughs because a lot of the time, all we need is just a realization of,
Mm-hmm.
and a good, having a plant medicine that is quite unstable. It could be good in that sense because you could jump and dive into these emotions and have these realizations, and all of a sudden, click, your awareness change, your perception changes of something, and all of a sudden you could
Mm-hmm.
walk out having this incredible healing. Um,
But it's so hard, sorry to interrupt, but it's like with plant medicine, what I notice with people is that they have a very difficult time integrating that realization. It's like, yeah, you have the realization, but now how do you integrate that? Because it's not going to last unless you have those tools as well, right?
yeah, exactly, and that actually leads to the reason why I began to use hypnosis
Mm-hmm.
and let go of the idea of plant medicines, is because it was stable. So it was way more stable to actually dive into certain beliefs, emotions, behaviors, and I could actually rest in there and really contemplate and realize, like, oh, like this is where I picked up this emotion from, or this is where I got this belief from, and you could kind of really explore and expand upon it. So it's like you could zoom in, you could zoom out, you could get the whole view of it, and you could also understand how it began. And so when you understand where it began and how it began,
Yeah.
then years later, like whenever something begins, it's like planting a seed. A seed in the soil, and then you wait time, and then this beautiful tree will grow, and it's like this massive, beautiful tree, and
Yeah.
at the end result, sometimes it's like, wow, like this behavior, or this part of my life is so big and so intense, but when you always go back to the beginning point and you understand where it started from like a little seed of an idea, then you have so much more empowerment. And to
Yeah.
being able to go into a subconscious state, and realizing where it all began, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I could have chosen that, or I could have chosen this perspective instead. And maybe it's as simple as looking at facts differently, from an
Yeah.
event. Maybe it's an event that happened in your life at a really young age, and
Yeah.
you just look at it differently, and all of a sudden that whole momentum changes, it transforms right in front of your face, because
Right.
now you're changing the seed of the idea, and now the tree is like it's quantum and it totally transformed into a brand new tree. And so it's yeah, in that sense, I loved hypnosis in that sense, because it was, for one, it was a lot easier getting into the conscious state or the subconscious state, but then it was
Yeah.
also a lot more stable to really explore.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've always, thought about plant medicine in terms of like, it's like taking, peeking in a window, like a window opening into like 25 years in the future, like all the things that you could learn in 25 years. And you're just getting like, you're peeking through the window of that, and there's no context. It's like seeing the earth in 2200 and being like, oh, wow, like that's incredible. And then there's no context there. Like there's awareness, like you're seeing those things, you're seeing all of it, but there's no context. And I think what you're expressing or trying to, what you're saying is that the hypnosis gives you that context of like, okay, this is how it started. This is where it's going to go if you keep going down that direction. But this is where it can go if you choose a different decision. So there's like all this context around it, and you get to see, yeah, like that bird's eye view of like how you can actually be a co-creator in that process instead of it being like just like slammed in your face and you're like, wow. That's why people have these incredible shifts. Like they're incredible shifts with plant medicine, but it's also like such it's very intense and it's like there's no context around it. So it can actually, it can go either way. It's super unstable. It could really benefit you or put you in a place of trauma even more. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
so I love what you do with hypnosis because that's such a guided process. It's still going down the same road, but with these tools and tactics that are a little bit more stable, as you say, which is such a um, a beautiful option that I don't think a lot of people take because they're like, oh, it's scary, like somebody else is involved in the process. That's the other part. I think a lot of people are like, oh, there's another human being that's involved in that process with me.
yeah, exactly. Because on our own, we naturally go in and out of trance many times in a day. Often we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
We at least traverse the deepened trance state, which is more the theta brainwave state, twice a day when we are awakening to start our day, and then also when we go to sleep. And so we at least traverse the really, really deep state of trance. But then all throughout the day, we kind of go in between the beta and alpha. Beta is just like the waking state of like talking to someone, working in the world. Alpha is more of the dreamy, daydreaming state. You might zone out, or maybe you just love music. You're listening to music and you go into that state of trance and you're just jiving with the music. Now, that's also like a very natural state of trance.
Mm.
And so being able to traverse that, I mean, we're already masters at trance. Is just opening the awareness to realize that we're already doing it. And so, often people are just like, well, I don't think you could hypnotize me. And, I don't think I could go in and hypnosis. But when people realize, and I explain that, hypnosis is just another title for trance, it's like, you're already a master at it. Like, you can go in and out of hypnosis all day if you wanted to, and you already are.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea with someone being there is completely different because then it's like, okay, well, the trust factor comes in. It's like, do I trust this person? Can I trust this person? What will happen? And I always, will bring up the idea, well, late at night, when we're really tired and we just had a long day, our mind will naturally want to go in a very light state of trance. We'll be a lot more zoned out. We might click on the TV. And it's this example of, what would you rather do? Watch these like drama TV shows, horror films, these scary movies, or have someone that's actually intending to like really help you get to the bottom of like a certain belief or a certain emotion, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, the TV is going to offer suggestions to you in that trance like state, and oftentimes like, yeah, I like this show, I like this show, and we're repeating it back, and that's our mind saying
Mm.
accept in that
Yeah.
deepened state of trance. Or have someone there like a therapist and say, well, okay, well, we pre-talked, and this is what you want to work on, like let's help you reach your goal. And when someone is like, okay, it's quite different, it really shifts a perspective on that. But yeah,
Yeah.
trust is often the big one.
And then the other part to that is like the mind actually doesn't know the difference between you dreaming something and something actually happening to you. So
Yeah, yeah.
like what you choose, in your trance is so important because the mind is sending all these hormones and chemicals and frequencies to the body that it believes that that's happening to you. So, you know, when I had my spiritual awakening, like the first time, I really took that. It was like, oh wow, the message was I have the power to choose what I am taking in my mind, right? Like what I watch, what I read, that horror movies are actually affecting me. Like my body believes that that's happening to me and that's creating a frequency within my body that is really unhealthy. And so, yeah, we have the power and we have the control to choose wisely what that trance is as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's something called the gateway of the mind. So the critical factor mind. It's a very, very small portion of our mind that I guess disconnect, not so much disconnect, but it's the gateway and the barrier between our conscious waking state and the trance state. And so it's like when we do take on information, whether it be we're reading something or listening to something or watching a TV or something will often go in our mind, and oftentimes it will begin to drop into our emotional state, and that will start to shift us. But we do have the potential to have these barriers and strengthen that gateway, and so we have way more control on what does go into our subconscious. And
Mm.
often it's as simple as just saying an intention is like, I intend for nothing to come into my subconscious unless I 100% agree with it.
Mm.
Because if we're driving down the road, for example, the highway and there's billboards and we look at it, it's like, oh, that's neat and that's cool, that's cool.
Mhm.
And it changes the way we feel. If it changes the way we feel, we know it's
There,
already gone into our subconscious.
there.
And so
Yeah.
you could say, oh, that's billboard's really nice, but no, thank you. No, thank
Yeah.
you. No, thank you.
Fair. And that's like really like living your life just in that more conscious way of like, oh, I am seeing this, right? Because a lot of people go through their life of just like, yeah, 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 there's lots of information, but I'm not really like conscious that I'm reading it or taking it in. It's just, it's there. I don't have a lot of energy to like be conscious all the time. So I'm just gonna like allow it to be there. You know what I mean? Do you get that? Like, it's like a lot of people just aren't really aware like what they're seeing or what information they're taking in, so they just allow it, but you can choose what you choose to take in and what you don't want to take in as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's
Really
always
cool.
good having those boundaries and barriers set up. And one of the things I teach in a course that I do is to set up those boundaries really strongly to the point where it becomes so habitual that you don't even have to think about it, and you're just like in this like pillar and this center point. And what happens is when you do like something, it's like, oh, I really, really love this idea. Then you allow it in, but then it's like, oh, you close everything back up, and you're just in
Yeah.
this like center pedestal, right? And so it's beautiful in that
It's
aspect,
hard though. It's very difficult to kind of strengthen that. Like you have to keep choosing that. I
especially
remember
at first. Yeah.
the first time that I had that kind of realization, like that I have the power. I had this meditation with six women who are all clairvoyant, like they could see things, and they were leading me through this meditation. And at one point in the meditation, he said, "You're in this water. You're underwater and you're swimming. You're swimming, you're swimming, you're swimming." And all I could see was I was in this shallow water and everything in front of me, like there were all these tree roots and like driftwood, like blocking my way. And so like I couldn't swim through. Like that's the vision that I was getting. And then when I got out of the meditation, I told them that, and they all had the same answer. They were just like, well, why didn't you just change it? Why didn't you just choose to move them and like go through? And for some reason, I was like, well, I didn't realize I had the option to do that. And I think a lot of people feel the same way subconsciously, that they don't have that power to choose what visions come up or what comes up in their trance. Like it's very difficult for them to even realize that they have that control to choose differently. For
Yeah.
some reason, it's like we don't see our subconscious mind as a tool. We see it as, you know, it is what it is. So, you know,
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up, and I love that vision and how you explain that. It's a perfect way to explain it, really. Yeah, what I've found is uh, with working with so many people, what happens is as we do grow up with like a family or people that are really close to us, we are, in a sense, really good at mimicking, because when we mimic someone, it's our way of feeling safe. It's our way of adapting to them. And when we can adapt to someone, especially as a kid or an infant, with our parents, then we can feel so safe and sound that, um, because when we mimic them, it's like we're reflecting them, and they will look at us as, like, more love and more care and compassion. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of that idea. And I had this experience with my dad. It's I moved away from him, and
Mhm.
we had a terrible relationship because I didn't feel safe and all these things. But getting back to the idea where we mimic our parents, and we adapt ourselves, and we
Yeah.
really take on people around us, close to us. It adapts and really begins to imprint those patterns. And oftentimes that's our world. Our parents are our world,
Mhm.
and we see the world through our parents and whoever we're close to in that matter. And so we don't realize how we have that power, because we've only given we are only given this, this concept, or this idea, or this vision of how the world is. And we've only given one choice, so we think like this is the only way. And that's what kind of imprints into our subconscious, is this is the only way that everything can be, because we've only had that one, example, to reflect and show. And the more we do begin to study ourselves and really analyze what we're going through. And like you're saying, the other people that were there said, why didn't you just change it? But it's that whole concept where we get stuck in that whole pattern
Mhm.
of, we think that this is the only way, the
Yeah.
way we've adapted to. And this is the only way because we feel so safe, because it provided that safety for us our whole life, that why would
Mhm.
I want to change and go into an unsafe zone, or this uncomfortable zone? And
Mhm.
so often we won't change. We'll stay in our ways. And I mean, that can build up through over time. It could build up from just being around certain information continuously, like the media or social media, or a group of friends, or a circle of friends. If we're
Yeah.
around them the whole time, we'll eventually adapt to them, and we'll feel safe, and we won't want to change.
Yeah, because you're constantly also like confirmed. It's like you're constantly confirmed, like, yes, this is what is acceptable and this is not going to be accepted from other people. Like if you're around constantly around the same friends all the time, and the same family members and all of that, and you never venture out into any other circles or anything like that, like you're constantly reconfirmed that like this is what is acceptable and this is what is not acceptable, or this is like your fears are reconfirmed almost, right? So it's like, okay, I need to act this way instead of this way, right? Whereas like if you actually ventured out into a different circle of people or a different environment, and if all of those things that were constantly reconfirmed to you would be like opening up a whole other channel, a whole other frequency of like, oh, I can actually act this way, or I can wear this, like even small things, right? But it's like it's all reconfirmed through the society that we choose to surround ourselves with. That those people reconfirm our notions, our actions, our thoughts, our fears, and things that are approved or received. So
Exactly.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I agree with you. Anybody that I talk to that has kind of changed their life completely has moved away from where they're from. That none of nobody I talk to is like, yeah, I stayed. I still live with my family, or I live around my family. I live in the same town. I do the same thing that I did 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and had like a complete transformation in terms of like how they think, or how they, what they do in their day-to-day life, or something really, really traumatic happened to them in their life, and maybe they did make a change. But to make a really big shift in your life, you have to take yourself out of this comfortable environment with the same people all the time, and really shift into a place that's unknown. And the ego keeps us in that space. It's like, no, this is what's safe, this is what you know, this is what you have education on or experience on, and that's where you need to stay, because that's where you're going to survive. right? But in order to thrive, we kind of have to take that risk of going beyond that boundary of what we know. So I'm really
Yeah.
happy you brought that up because that's so true about your parents and the people that reflect that back to you. It's really important. And I think especially at this time, right? It's like so many of us recon are reconfirmed our fears or our thoughts because we are only surrounding ourselves with people that think the same way, right?
Yeah, there's
So
this.
we never have that chance.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the study done by Harvard Business, and they're saying the five people that you spend the most time with determine up to 95% of our success or failure.
Wow, yeah. Yes.
So,
I'm so like cutthroat now. Like I really like I embrace it all. Like I'm there. I'll be there for you. But like my inner circle of people is like, and you have to be that way. Like you can't allow people into your inner circle that are like super low vibe all the time and take your energy. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
also, not to say like cut people out that don't think the same way. I don't agree with that either. But you have to be really, really aware and conscious of like who are you talking to every day? Who is in your inner circle? Like not just like
right.
acquaintances. Like, yeah, acquaintances are gonna always be there, people that you need to talk to, but who's there like every single day? Because those are the people that are really influencing how you think and how open you are to thinking differently as well, right? It's so
Yeah,
important. And I do see, a lot of that happening even in the conscious community. I see a lot of that. It's like if you are on an extremist point of view in any direction, you have work to do because the answer to everything is balance. The answer to everything is listening to either side, processing it, and then making your own decision. I mean, I think that's the next level, obviously, is like not just surrounding yourself with other people and taking in information, but truly processing that information and allowing that feeling, the yes or the no to come from within, not just the regurgitation of listening to other people, right? That's what's so
yeah,
important. That's the next level, I would say, of like the processing of this information and the conscious awareness, right? That's how you activate
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And tuning into different areas of the body as well. There's talking about activation. My mind just went to, okay, let's find information that'll activate us. Um, there's this really amazing fundamental that I've been exploring more and more, and it's the awareness of knowing how when we think a stressful thought, our body tenses up. And so it's
Mhm.
like this instantaneous, fully integrated setting of our body. And same with emotions when we have maybe a belief or certain thoughts that create certain emotions or generate certain emotions. Then that emotion will cause the body to tense up as an emotional tension. And over
Yeah.
time, talking about chakras, when you brought that up, we can definitely store different emotions in different chakras.
Mhm.
And that emotional tension, what happens is when we have a lot more of that emotional tension continuously being generated, all of a sudden it will start to cause resistances and limitations within our circulation, within our energy flow, with our ability to have an open chakra, an expressed chakra. And
Mhm.
that will really determine how we show up as well, as because when we have more and more and more tension and things really start to close down, that's when our body becomes imbalanced. That's when
Yeah.
we'll start to manifest illness and disease, and our organs might start to malfunction, is because of all these tensions and all this restriction that we're doing onto our body. And that just comes from a thought, like a stressful thought. um,
Yeah.
and and so being able to tune in and activate and heal is literally just going inwards and okay, like this is the chakra that I want to work on, or the area of the body I want to work on, and tune into it and start having that self inquiry. And as
Yeah.
you do begin to decipher, okay, what is this tension, what is this emotional tension telling me, why do I have it, where does it come from, you can start to realize the ideas that you were entertaining that was causing that emotional tension. And the more you can clear, the more you can realize and shift your awareness or shift your perspective, all of a sudden you're not creating any more of that emotional tension, because you literally have a new belief that's creating a new emotion, and maybe more joyous and maybe more freeing and expressive.
Yeah. And it's really about cutting that chain reaction, because it's a cycle, right? Like the chakras influence the thoughts and the thoughts influence the chakras. It's a mirrored effect. It's not one affecting the other. They're affecting both ways. So once we choose differently, like we cut that off with our conscious awareness, right? Then we can kind of break the cycle of that mirrored effect going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, creating a frequency, and then we can cut that off. So it's about, I mean, it all comes back to being like really, really aware and being the witness of what our thoughts are, being the witness of how we're choosing those thoughts, and understand that we can choose those thoughts. And that kind of links back to like, the meditation where it's like, why don't you just choose differently? You can just choose to move those, it's your imagination, it's your dream state, it's your trance. Like nobody else is. It's kind of like, have you ever watched The Office? The episode where Dwight like has this dream, or he has this like second life online, and he chooses to be the exact same person that he is. It's like, oh, so in your dream, you are the exact same person, and you are an assistant manager still. It's like you can do whatever you want. It's your own
Yeah.
dream. You can choose whatever, and we don't realize that even when we're in that trance state sometimes. So it's a really cool thing to realize. It's like, oh, I am my own co-creator. Like I am a
Yeah.
part of this. I am a part of choosing the energy. And that's a really
Yeah.
cool thing to understand once you can like work with it a little bit more. And I know like we can talk about this stuff forever, but until you like actually experience it, um, I think that's definitely the next level. So it's like that's why I wanted to bring you on here today, because um, the work that you do is so powerful and so necessary. I hope people take more steps towards either like any type of trance that they can get into, and work that muscle, like you said, that gatekeeper between the subconscious mind, and choosing how to redirect our energy and our thought process, and how we can kind of be more of a co-creator in that space, instead of like, I'm just going to fall into the abyss and allow it to do what it wants. It's like, no, you get to also facilitate and engage in that process as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on today. That was an awesome
Blessings.
talk. I'd
Yeah.
love to do more of these as well. And I would love to end, usually, not today because we're at an hour, but usually with like like some sort of affirmation, like hypnosis that you can provide, so people can kind of see, you know, what you offer, and how we can give a little bit of experience in these talks as well, because me, I don't like to talk too much. I like to experience. So
Nice.
um,
Yeah.
if we do more of these. And everybody knows that Michael and I are, we work together with the Sacred Bliss, and there's going to be more events coming up, probably end of February or March time, that we'll be doing some more events together. Um, and meanwhile, we're doing a ton of stuff online. And I know, Michael, you're doing some sound healing stuff as well, right?
Yeah, sound healing, the odd time. I have lots of events online. I actually have a free 1 hour hypnosis session. It's like a deep relaxation hypnosis, and that's through Facebook events. So I could
Oh, cool.
definitely access that if people do want to experience like a really nice calming hypnosis relaxation. Also have lots of live education. Right now, I have one coming up on Tuesday. It's the top 3 ways to succeed at changing habits.
Mhm.
And that is, yeah, great theory, but also some practical tips.
Good.
And then also, yeah, just lots to offer all the time, and I'm looking forward to getting back together and doing the events as
Yeah.
well.
And like everybody knows, I don't collaborate. Like I don't collaborate with a lot of people. That's not really my vibe. Like I collaborate and love to be around people, but I'm not a huge, like I don't like to do a lot of events with a lot of people. So if I do, it means that, I trust this person. Like Michael is somebody that I trust completely. And he has so much education, but also so much experience in this field. So I would never ever like bring you on or collaborate with anybody that I don't trust 100%. And Michael
Blessings.
truly is that person. He's such a gift. He's such an angel to me, and so many people that we've worked with together say the exact same thing. So thank you so much for being a part of the community. This is somebody that you can trust. Like, I am fully on board with everything that you provide. Um,
Thank you. It
One
means a
thing that I'll
lot.
just leave with is we're at the church every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. doing the ceremonial yoga and Reiki with cathedral music. And just an announcement that we are going to be there Sunday evenings as well at 6:30, doing cacao and some EFT tapping. We're going to be doing some tapping work
Cool.
and chanting. So you might see Michael there. And then online, we're doing a 7-week series for the chakras. So it'll be 7 weeks. We're going to focus each week on one chakra and all the crystals that you can bring in to that kind of align with those chakras, what essences live in those chakras, how you can co-create with those chakras, and build a relationship with those chakras as well. So if you're kind of looking for something that kind of puts you in that activation mode, you have two people right here where you can reach out, and there's a multitude of ways to kind of facilitate that and move forward for yourself. So thanks so much, Michael.
Thank
Love
you.
you so much. And
Yeah.
hopefully we'll talk again probably in a couple of weeks here.
Sounds great. Yeah. Thank you so much for, having me on, and I'll share this with the group as well. So it's great that
Yeah.
you're able to share, and I have a pretty big audience that loves the whole idea with chakras and working through different chakras and energy, and also another part of the group that's all more scientific and,
Yeah.
getting into the theory behind the subconscious. So it's yeah, a beautiful blessing to have many different perspectives of inner work.
Michael is definitely more the theoretical guide. That's why I have him. I always tell him like, let's just do, let's just be, and he's like, but I have something to say. Okay, like here's a microphone
Yeah.
all the
Amazing.
time. So I
All
can't
right.
wait. This year's gonna be awesome. There's gonna be
It
so
will
many
be.
awesome creations, and yeah, the energy is percolating. So excited to do and create.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you
likewise.
soon, Mother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Blessings, and have an amazing evening. And yeah,
Love you.
you too.
Bye.
Bye.